Hello, everybody. Margot Levette here. It is March, and we are working in collaboration with WomELLE Magazine. You know it, the leading women's magazine. We are saying we see you and we celebrate 25 powerful women to follow for Women's History Month. So kicking this off here at Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation, I want to lead you to the conversation that I had with Mary Crafts. She is going to open up the door and let us know how in the world do you build one of Utah's largest catering companies when you are coming from literally nothing. And then that same business is very sustainable, very much alive. It's made its way through this dreadful pandemic that has closed the doors and turned off the lights for so many companies. So, myself, I think you have to be a badass. And you'll come to that same conclusion as you listen to my conversation with Mary Crafts. Welcome to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. This podcast was created for the boomer woman leaving corporate, and now you're looking to reinvent yourself, become an author, an entrepreneur, a podcaster. Well, each episode will leave you with clarity. You will come away with the yes, I can and yes, I will reinvent myself mindset. So come on, let's do this. I'm your host, Margot Levette. Welcome to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. This podcast was created for the boomer woman leaving corporate, and now you're looking to reinvent yourself, become an author, an entrepreneur, a podcaster. Well, each episode will leave you with clarity. You will come away with the yes, I can and yes, I will reinvent myself mindset. So come on, let's do this. I'm your host, Margot Levette. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode, Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. Well, you know, it's said that podcasters are really storytellers, but today my guest will tell her story, how she dismantled the ICE ceiling of the culinary industry. Oh yeah, she is the founder of Culinary Crafts, one of Utah's largest off-premise catering company. She's catered thousands of events over her 35-year career, and her consistency, mastery, business savvy allowed her to secure clients such as Sir Elton John, Oprah Winfrey, and I'm sure that that's just a modest, she's probably been all over Utah, all over the United States. I'm just so sure. So let me introduce to you author, speaker, podcaster, one of Utah's coolest entrepreneurs. I'm talking about Mary Crafts. Mary, thanks for joining me.
Margot, I hope I can live up to that kind of an intro. Thank you very much, you dynamo.
Well, you did the work. And today is all about inspiring others, men and women. I don't want anybody to feel as though, she's a woman that broke that ice, that glass ceiling. Culinary industry is tough. So can we start out there? When we read about people such as yourself and the things that you've done, the tenacity, the grit, did you have a silver spoon in your mouth? How is it that you accomplished everything that you did? You've experienced it and you landed on your feet. Did you have strong backing of millions of dollars from the beginning? Tell us how you started out, Mary.
Well, I did have a silver spoon in my mouth, but I didn't know it until I got to this age of 66. Because that silver spoon was not something, a big bank account from my parents, or, that they knew the right people. That silver spoon was the person inside that I was born to be. Mm. And that silver spoon, I didn't realize was there until I got into my life and began to grow. And I believe we're all blessed as we come onto this planet with that kind of inner light that if we can learn to turn it on and to listen to it, that it will be greater than any materialistic silver spoon that could possibly have been given to us.
Oh my. I believe what you're saying. Go ahead. Carry on. I said I wasn't going to interfere. People
honey, I need you to jump in, because otherwise people are going to get so bored. Like, is that woman ever going to shut up?
Don't you ever shut up, Mary Crafts, because what you have done, I mean, you are in the Utah's largest catering company, Culinary Crafts. Now, when we watch the television shows of all the folks that are cooking and catering and the dominated by men, they don't seem to be the nicest people. They don't seem to be the most generous lot in life. So it was turning on this inner light that made you understand, this is what I like. This is what I'm here to do. And doggone it, I'm going to do the thing. Are you from the big city? Did you, did your parents have a restaurant, catering company? How did you begin to know this is where I'm supposed to be?
Well, I was born and raised in Iowa, in a small town of 250 people. So no, I did not have a silver spoon, and they definitely taught me some things, not necessarily the fine art of entertaining, but they taught me the values and the principles in my life that I have taken and grown with. My father was just a small town businessman, but I saw in him the qualities that I really want to emulate. And as he totally was about serving the farmers in that community, he provided nearly everything for them. From groceries to appliances to gas to plumbing. I mean, you name it, he just kept coming up with new things that these farmers needed. And so being very much of that entrepreneur mindset, even in a very microcosm in Iowa. And I moved out to Utah to go to school, and went to school in social work, was sure that that was going to be my grand calling. And I actually did work in that field for about 5 years. But then when I married, and it didn't take very long for me to realize that my husband at that time was not going to be able to support us. He was bipolar and had a rage disorder, a paranoia disorder, and later, came out as gay. And not that there's any wrong with being gay. It's just when you are married to someone else who believes they have a different life, to find out that they have this life mm-hmm. is quite a shock to the system. Mm-hmm. And in my life, Margot, I've been given what I considered 2 second chances at life. And I walked through both doors. Mm. So many times people see their lot in life and they say, oh, here it is. My house is set up in Victimville, and this is where I'm living for the rest of my life because poor me, I don't know how to get out. And somebody's done something to me, and I ended up here. And I certainly had the opportunity to say that in my marriage when who I thought was going to support me and let me be a stay-at-home mom mm-hmm. ended up not being able to work at all. Mm-hmm. And instead, I had someone say to me, Mary, you have 3 choices. You can divorce this man now and raise 2 small boys by yourself, or you can stay on welfare, which I was at the time, or you can pick yourself up by your bootstraps and support yourself and this family because you know inside you can. And I was like, well, there must be another choice. I don't like any of those choices. But then as I looked at it, I decided, yes, I wanted to try and hold this little family together. And so what could I do that I could do at home and not have to put those little boys in daycare? And I thought, well, I love to cook and I love to entertain. I wonder if I could cater. I wonder what that's about. And so I started with $150 in my pocket. And that's not just to start the business. That was of entirety to live on. And I started baking breads and cookies and all sorts of things, putting those two little boys in a little red wagon and taking them around the neighborhood. And let me just tell you, Margot, and your listeners, if ever you're short on money, take two small children, put them in a little red wagon and go around the neighborhood because anybody will buy anything from you, you know. And from those humble beginnings, we built Culinary Crafts to be the largest off-premise caterer in the state of Utah, 20 times best of state. And people say to me all the time, did you ever dream that from those humble beginnings that you would be at this point? And my response, Margot, is always the same. Absolutely. Because if you don't dream it, if you don't envision it, if you don't put that out in front of you, you will never achieve it. Yes. And the amount of hard work that took was just really kind of unbelievable. I think that's how I developed grit and the resilience that when you're, I think of myself oftentimes, and I want everyone to think about this visual and develop this in their life, of those clown dolls that are life-size, that are filled with sand on the bottom, and they get punched and they tip over, but what happens? They bounce right back up. And so can I just tell you the number of times I was beat down and then bounce up? And the more times you do that, the more confidence you obtain, the more resilience you obtain, and grit becomes part of my life and anyone's life who learns that bouncing back attribute.
See, that is key right there, especially what was key then for you, and it's definitely key now. Bounce back. That's the key to your consistency, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I see now, and so many people are, and they say I can't wait for things to get back to normal. Well, honeys, they're not coming back to normal. Mm-hmm. So we've got to go from this point. You're going to have to bounce back up in this world as it is today and look at it and make decisions and move on. I sold my catering company a year and a half ago to my children. And even though I'm still chairman of the board, I'm not necessarily involved. And when I sold it to them, of course, it was this multi-million-dollar organization and huge, and it was going so big. And little did they know that 18 months later, this was going to happen. Mm-hmm. That there would be no business for catering companies. And so now they've had to kind of crawl back to a standing position and regroup. Okay, well, we never did events for under 30. Now we do events for 10. Mm-hmm. And, we never did small takeout things. And now we're known for takeout, for meals for 4. I mean, it's a constant regrouping and relooking and reinventing and just resilience through that whole entire process.
Mm. But I love the fact they didn't give up, though. That's what I love. They have their mother's grit and they respect what you built. So to pivot was natural. I shouldn't say natural, but there was no other choice for them. There was no way. They couldn't figure this out to move forward.
Well, I think that there certainly were other choices for them, Margot, but they didn't choose them. I mean, they could have just said, I know of quite a few catering companies across the country that simply closed their doors, shut down, told their employees, maybe we'll reopen in a year. I mean, they gave up. Mm-hmm. And they didn't choose that. And I do think that it is a piece of my grit that they that they carry within themselves. Because they've not only seen me build this company and, go through 9/11, and we went through the recession of 2008 and 9 and 10. And they knew that it was possible. And the same kind of stick-to-itness will see them through this.
Mm-hmm.
For me as a person, the second chance in life that I was given didn't happen till age 50. And that's why I say to anyone, it's never too late and nothing is impossible. And then even though I had built this outstanding company that was prosperous and had a wonderful reputation and doing well, I had never dealt with the fears that were inside of me, that were holding me by the jugular vein. And that's part of what made me a great caterer was that I was so afraid of what other people would think of me. I was such a pleaser that, dang, I would just go head over heels to make somebody's, event turn perfect and to do whatever I could for them. But it was for the wrong reasons. The reasons were out of fear. Because I was afraid of messing up. I was afraid what people would think of me. I was afraid of not having enough money if I messed up. I mean, that's a fear-based life. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that inside of myself at age 50, and I got back those pictures from my wedding, or not, from my birthday party, there I sat and I looked at her and I thought, as I saw those photos of me, who is this woman? And how did she get here? And worse yet, how do I get away from here? I was 284 pounds, very successful, but inside so unhappy, just a plastic smile on my face. And so driven by fear, every decision. And I decided that day, I sat there and looked at those photos. Whatever that fear is, I'm going to find it and I'm going to deal with it. And I'm going to move to who the real me is. Because the weight was not the problem. The weight was a manifestation, was a protectionism actually for me. And I needed to find a passageway from fear-based living to love-based living. And so for the first time in my life, Margot, I began to be vulnerable and reveal myself and my weaknesses, show them to the world. Let me be authentic.
Yes.
And what I discovered, that the woman I had been trying to hide all these years, she was so much better than the woman I thought I was being. And I took on this hashtag of a badass woman with a purpose, grace, and grit.
Yes.
And I have never let go of it. Mm-hmm. I have used that badass to become the strong woman that I am. And it took me to the summit of Kilimanjaro last year. And now, of course, I have my Marco Polo channel where I give instructions and hope and guidelines and encouragement to anybody over 50 who is wanting to transform their life and their weight, and from daily exercises to what you can do in your home, to cooking, motivation, to letting go of fear. I have my weekly podcast. I just finished my first book, all after the age of 50.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Man, crafting a meaningful life. That's your podcast, and it is right to the point. Mary Craft, I hope that people are paying attention to your story of how would a person, when you were catering for, say, Oprah Winfrey, Sir Elton John, I'm sure for the governors
Two
of
presidents
Utah,
of the United States, yeah.
Oh, see, and who was to know that you were operating out of fear? Now you are at your optimum best. You were at your best in your field then, but as a person. This is so revealing. You are at your Mount Kilimanjaro. This
Yeah.
is people need to get there. And I'm looking at the time. I don't want to belabor the conversation. I want people to marinate on this conversation of how you made your transition into the cleaning up the backstage, the heart and the life of Mary Crafts. People need to do that same thing. One final question.
Yes.
What does it look like for tomorrow? I know that you are teaching, you are in your realm. I feel the power and the grit. I feel the forward thrust in your life. But what do you see for yourself and before the year is out?
Sure. Well, my mission being now to empower myself, and I always list myself first, because if you don't do it to yourself, you can't help others. So my mission is to empower myself and others to live a fearless life and to find the higher self within. And my higher self, of course, I call my badass. Everyone has that higher self, whether you call it a badass or your light or whatever. And so with that mission, my speaking, of course, publicly at conferences around the country is on hold because no one's doing that now, which is why I have started my Marco Polo channel and my podcast. I would invite people to visit my website, which is marycraftsinc.com, and all the opportunities to connect with me are there. And my book is now going from the editors to the publishers, and it's called Unbounded, From Sorrow to Summit. And so I would love to see that. They tell me that it's impossible to do before the end of the year. So perhaps then that's my first thing on the list in 2021. The other thing that I want to make sure that I am doing personally the rest of this year, and this is something that each and every one of us can do each and every day. We're no longer completely isolated in our homes. We're no longer told just to stay home. So when you go out, engage with people. We have gotten in this space, and I think you've probably seen it, Margot, because we're doing this 6-foot distancing. So it's like when you pass by it's like it also says, stay 6 feet apart and look the other way. Mm-hmm. So when we pass by them, we look the other way as if that's going to protect us, Yes. But when you're out, don't look away. Look at people, engage people with your eyes. With or without your mask, they can see your eyes. Mm-hmm. They can see if they're smiling. Let them know that there is one other person in the world that sees them, that they are not invisible, and they see you. When someone looks at you directly in the eye, you somehow feel empowered. And that's what I want to do the rest of this year, is to continue to empower people in small ways. Some of my big ways, grand speaking, those may not be happening for me the rest of this year, but one-on-one empowerment is. And no matter, when I look at the social unrest and what's coming about, I am just like elated. This is all part of one grand transformation to our planet. Yes. And an opportunity for awakening, and the little piece that we can each play. We have to find it. We have to find, what's my little piece? And as you know from your podcast, as your podcast goes out every week, as my podcast goes out, that's my one way of connecting to people. Hold on to my hand. We're going to do this together.
Well, you heard it from one badass woman with purpose, grace, and grit. It has been my pleasure to spend this time with you, Mary Crafts. I feel myself tearing up. There's something so dynamic about you, the measure of transparency and humanity. I wanted to go out and touch lives and cause people to look into the eyes of others.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, listen to the shows more than one time, and definitely you're going to have to reach out to Mary Crafts. She told you where she can be found. You're going to have to listen to her podcast, Crafting a Meaningful Life. And you're going to have to listen to this episode more than one time, because in the short span of time we've been together, she has literally once again dismantled the ceiling of I can't, I'm afraid, I'm not enough. I can't go any further. She's just literally rebuilt what life is all about. I thank you so much, dear lady. Thank you.
My
Thank you, thank
pleasure. And I'll look forward to seeing you on a speaking stage when I'm 90.
you. Well, I look forward to you also, because you know what, folks, with grit, we just get older, we get a little bit wiser, but we're never quiet. So,
That's right.
gosh. As I always say to everyone, this concludes another episode. I'll be back next week with another topic, well, I can't say it's going to be a badass, but they're hard to find. Authentic badasses are hard to find. But we'll be back with another episode, Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. In the meantime, take care, be safe, all right? And be authentic. Do everything that Mary Craft told you to do. I'll be back
Thank you
next
for
week.
having me,
Bye-bye
Margo.
now. Thank you. I want to thank you for listening to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. Couple of things that I want you to do right now. Go to my website, pick up a copy of Her Business, Her Voice, Her Reinvention, how I went from game show hopping to international show host, author, and speaker in 1 year. Number 2, please freely listen to each and every episode. Share them out with your family, friends, the men in your lives. And then number 3, get in contact with me, one of the experts that have been on the show, because I want to make sure that you reinvent yourself. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode here on Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. I want to thank you for listening to Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation. Couple of things that I want you to do right now. Go to my website, pick up a copy of Her Business, Her Voice, Her Reinvention, how I went from game show hopping to international show host, author, and speaker in 1 year. Number 2, please freely listen to each and every episode. Share them out with your family, friends, the men in your lives. And then number 3, get in contact with me, one of the experts that have been on the show, because I want to make sure that you reinvent yourself. I'll be back next week with a brand new episode here on Her Business, Her Voice, Her Conversation.